Good evening. We'd like to call the February 13th, 2013 Urban Design Commission meeting to order. Can we have a roll call?
Jim Sawhill.
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie.
Here.
Thomas Tybor.
Here.
Steve Pratt. Monica Sullivan.
Here.
Monica Emergen.
Here.
All right. Good evening. Do any of the members have any disclosures? Mr. Tybor.
Yes, I need to disclose that my wife was a former employee of Dell HKM who is representing the petitioners for both the cases before us tonight, 2013-11 and 2013-12.
Commissioner Tybor, do you feel that you have any conflict of interest that would prohibit you from participating in this case?
We don't derive any financial income from Dell, and I don't believe I have a conflict at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Tybor. Any other commissioners? Does anyone else on the board feel that Mr. Tybor is conflicted in any way? Seeing no objection, Mr. Tybor, you're asked to participate. Okay, we have a 5-member board tonight, and when we have a 5-member board, it means I have to read a little spiel. When there is a short 5-member board or commission and a postponement is offered to and agreed to by the petitioner, they will be moved to the next regular agenda. This should occur within 30 days, which does not require renoticing the case, new public hearing notices, advertising. If the petitioner is willing to postpone but unable to attend the next available meeting date within 30 days, the petitioner has a one-time only option to choose the next date he or she can attend at no extra fee. When a postponement is required by the petitioner, there is no rescheduling fee, and a new public hearing date shall be determined by the planning department. This will put their case in the next available cutoff queue as if they were submitting their case for the first time. At this time, I'd like to call the petitioner for case 2013-012, which would be a Municipality of Anchorage Public Works.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Ritter with Dow HKM.
Okay. So do you understand the short board, how that works?
Yes.
And you're willing to proceed?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is someone here from Dow as well?
Yes.
Yes. Could someone from Dow come up? We'll cover the short board on your case as well.
Tanya Hickok with Dell HKM.
And do you understand the short board?
Yes.
And you're willing to proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. One last piece of disclosure before we go ahead and see. An individual may have an appeal right relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission's final decision. With saying that, we're ready to hear your presentation. Okay, good. Hold on one second. Now we're back to the agenda. Okay. All right, on our regular agenda, we have item F2A, case 2013-012, Municipality of Anchorage Public Works, final site plan and landscape plan review for public facility. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Dinwiddie. The purpose of this project is to replace the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department Bill Low Fire Station. Previously, the firehouse was located in the warehouse structure directly south of the site, but last winter the roof collapsed due to heavy snow load. And in August 2012, the Assembly adopted an ordinance which identified this site as the parcel for the new fire station, waiving the standard site selection process. The site is located between Glen Highway and the old Glen Highway south of Lower Fire Lake. Class A and C wetlands are located on the western portion of the site, and Fire Creek runs through the western portion as well. The site plan maintains a 100-foot setback from Fire Creek and a 25-foot setback from the wetlands. And the site has been cleared to the silt fence, which is noted on the site plan. The subject parcel is zoned PLI and is currently vacant. The current property line bisects the eastern portion of the site and the proposed site improvements, and the applicant is in the process of purchasing property from the state. A proposed condition of approval requires that the preliminary plat be submitted before final site plan approval and that the final plat be recorded before CCO. The proposed project meets the standards for a public facility site plan review, public facility landscape review, and screening along major highways as outlined in the staff report. The Chugiak Community Council wrote a letter in support of the project that's on page 64 of the staff report, and the department recommends approval subject to conditions 1 through 4 in the staff report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Thank you. Will the petitioner come forward?
Good evening. I'm Michelle Ritter with Dow HKM. With me this evening is Blaise Burkhart with Burkhart Croft Architects to speak to specific architectural questions, and also the project landscape architect, Kevin Donier, who can answer specific landscaping questions. As staff has indicated, the site is located between the old and new Glen Highway and Eagle River in the Eagle River Chugiak area. The site does slope from the east to the west, and the western portion is encumbered with both Class A and C wetlands and Lower Fire Creek, which has a 100-foot setback from center line of the creek, and the wetlands both have 25-foot setbacks. So when placing the building on the site, those setbacks were taken into consideration. We also looked at the proximity of the site to the dam, and wanted to made sure that there would be no problems if the dam ever failed. And so there is actually a 15-foot vertical separation from the finished floor elevation from the lake, as well as a 20-foot vertical separation from the finished floor to the creek. And there's about a 130-foot horizontal separation, which will maintain its vegetation, so if there is ever any flooding, it would be mitigated. It's also important to note that in 2006, there was a dam rehabilitation project to ensure that the properties downstream of that dam would not be flooded in the potential failure of that. The architecture of the site ties into the community. It kind of uses some of the same materials as the Harry J. McDonald Center across the street. It's going to contain corrugated metals, tiles, and we'll have a wooden screen fence to block the generator and dumpster pad along the old Glen. You'll notice that a lot of the back of the house is facing the old Glen, and that's a matter of function, so the apparatus bays can get access for egress and ingress. And the front of the house features such as the entrance are along the west elevation, and that's because that actually faces the residential developments in the area. Landscaping of the site consists of visual enhancement along the north, south, and east property sides. It will be a mixture of trees and shrubs, including quaking aspen, paper birch, lodgepole pines, and potentilla, lilac, and rose bushes. Along the west property line, that's subject to highway screening because it is along the Glen Highway, And as noted, we will not be clearing that area. We will be using the existing vegetation to meet that standard. As it is encumbered with wetlands, it wouldn't be desirable to disturb the area by either removing the vegetation or putting additional plantings in. So we are asking for final approval of the public facility site plan, the landscape plan review, and for the highway screening this evening. And with that, I'd like to save the remainder of my time for a rebuttal.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Sawhill.
Turn my mic on. Sorry. I got a couple questions. I brought up the issue of the dam, and is it safe to put a fire station downstream of a dam? Seems a little scary to me. And usually with dams, they have to prepare a dam failure analysis, emergency action plan, and then develop an inundation map that shows the area that will be flooded in the event it comes apart. Have you reviewed those documents?
No, we have not.
So you don't think it'll be flooded, or you've reviewed documents and know it won't be flooded?
I don't know if you want to speak to this, but we believe that it won't be flooded as the finished floor of the development sits above about 8 feet higher than Fire Lake or West Lake Ridge Drive. And so we believe that if there were a dam failure and there was flooding, that there would be a wide area of dispersion and that there wouldn't be an effect to the building.
Okay. Would you have an objection to an additional condition to review the flood inundation plan and ensure that the fire station will be outside that area?
No, we do not.
Okay. My next question is snow storage. And I was reviewing the area that you have, if I can get north oriented, kind of in the back parking area. It looks like you set the landscaping back from the edge of pavement to provide some snow storage in the back. Is that the intent, to plow it to the west side and store snow back there? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess I was wondering what the plan for snow storage for the front area in front of the apparatus bays, what the plan there is.
I think is that pushing it to the back.
And adjacent to.
Okay. That will probably push to the kind of northeast corner in front of the generator pad, and then also pushed into the back if needed.
Okay. Well, it would seem to me in the northeast corner there that you might want to, I hate to say this, but not landscape so much and have some snow storage in that area as a consideration.
Okay.
My next question is, you have the dumpster there in the front. Was there any consideration of putting the dumpster in the back?
Yes.
Why didn't you put the dumpster in the back?
I'm going to let Blaze speak to that.
We had the dumpster in the back, and after reviewing we also at one point had a second driveway out to the road down to the lake. With that scenario, we would have had better ability to bring trucks in and turn them around and pick the dumpster. Once that also was problematic for a lot of other reasons, including impact to the neighbors. So when that was eliminated, we put all of those objectionable type things in one screened area so they could be serviced readily. And
Right in the front of the building?
well, that is the rub of this entire project from a planning and aesthetic perspective, is that by function it really needs to be on this site backwards. But the case I make is that right on the front of the building is a highway. The other option we have is a residential road. So we have two conflicting, requirements kind of going on there, and I think it's better to scale the building and the views more appropriately to that side if you had to pick one of the two. So that's kind of the logic that we used.
What material are you going to use for your screening fence around the dumpster and generator?
It'll be a decorative wood fence.
So it'll be a wood fence?
Mr. Burkhart, we know who you are, but for the record, will you state your name?
I'm sorry. Blaze Burkhart, Principal Burkhart Craft Architect.
Thank you. Mr. Sahel?
Yeah, I've got a little more.
Okay.
I'm not done yet. My next question is, I'm kind of confused by Lake Ridge Drive because it's not in the right-of-way. It's on your property, actually, and it curves over. Is there an easement for Lake Ridge Drive so it can be where it's at?
I think there is. I don't think it is on our property.
I believe that it's not on our property as well.
So there's a public use easement for it?
No,
There's nothing?
no.
I believe there's an actual right-of-way for it. I couldn't swear by that, but the property line for our parcel is shown on our drawing here as it's platted, and it's definitely on the other side of the road.
Yeah, and that's where I was confused. I pulled up the grid maps for the area, and Lake Ridge Drive is a straight road all the way from the old Seward over to the old Glen. And the grid map boundary of your parcel doesn't match the boundary that's here. And I guess where I'm leading with that is the landscaping that's on the adjacent to Lake Ridge Drive seems to me to be too close to Lake Ridge Drive. It's right on the edge of the road. I don't know where they would plow the snow for the road. I think it would damage the landscaping. I think the landscaping you have there is appropriate, but maybe needs to be slid in so there's room to plow snow and all those kind of good things. If you offset the center line of Lake Ridge Drive 30 feet to where a right-of-way would typically be, that line would go right through the landscaping you're showing. So I was kind of confused as to how much right-of-way was there and is the landscaping in the right spot?
Well, the second question might be the easier one to answer. I believe the landscaping is in the right spot because one of the considerations for its placement is the drainage ditch that's on the road, and it's on the property side of that ditch. So in that respect, I think plowing activities and so forth continue as they do now. With respect to, any issues of the right-of-way property boundaries on the road itself, quite frankly, we didn't really investigate those much. We tend to worry more about, dotting the i's and crossing the t's of the parcel that we're building on.
Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sahel. Are there any other questions of the petitioner? I have a quick question for Mr. Denier. Your name?
My name's Kevin Denier, landscape architect on the project.
Thank you, Kevin. You got lodgepole pines for the screening, and one of the things that I'm not sure I've seen a lodgepole pine in this town that isn't limbed now to 8-foot height, and particularly the last fire station, I particularly planted lodgepole pines out in Sand Lake, and they're 20 years old now, and they're above the windows where the fire station actually limbed them. So is that really a good choice for because it's always been really thick. I get the idea of spruce trees and particularly green spruce trees. They have a tendency to all the bugs have been eating them crazy. But how can we get? Can you get a lodgepole that is going to be full? Or are you going to be able to, because you know where I'm going with this.
Right. And this is visual enhancement landscaping, and what we were trying to do with this landscaping was match some of the landscaping that was done on the Harry J. McDonald.
Okay.
So they have a mixture of some of the same plant materials that we have on this one, and we thought, well, let's try to kind of match not only some of the architecture, but some of the landscape architecture that's out there.
Okay, great. Perfect. Are there any other questions of the petitioner? Hearing none, thank you very much. You still have a little bit of time. Is there anything else you would like to say?
I forgot this wasn't a public hearing. No, thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Well, we've heard the case and we've asked the questions. Can we entertain a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve by Mr. Sawhill, seconded by Commissioner Emerton. Mr. Sawhill, would you like to speak to your motion? Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the case 2013-012, I move for final site plan approval and final landscape approval and screening along major highway for the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department Bill Low Fire Station 35 replacement. Subject to staff's conditions 1 through 4, and it looks like 4, it's A through F. And I'd like to add a condition number 5 to review the dam failure analysis to ensure that the fire station is outside the flood area in case of in the event of a dam failure. And I think I'm going to wait on my last condition. I'm still a little concerned, in spite of the petitioner's assurance that a portion of the landscaping along Westlake Drive is just too close to the road. But I'll let that motion with those conditions stand and then maybe speak to that with an amendment later, once I get a second.
Thank you, Mr. Sawhill. Commissioner Emerton, would you like to speak to your second?
No.
Okay, it's been,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
yes, sir.
You know, I think the plan that the petitioner has brought forward is good and well thought out. I would concur with staff's findings that the standards for site plan approval and landscape approval have been met. I think this is a tough site. It would be nice to maybe design this a little different and have some pull-through bays like some of the other fire stations do, but I understand the constraints they have here. They have considered expansion of the site in the future to allow people to be staying at the fire station. It's currently designed as a volunteer fire station. I think the landscaping improvements are well thought out and the drainage that goes with them. I guess I was concerned that putting a fire station below a dam is maybe not the best idea, but I think we have additional condition to make sure that in the event of our emergency facilities will survive and be available to help out. So that'll be good. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Sawhill. Is there any further discussion? I'm thinking a second.
I guess I would add, I'm not a big fan of the lodgepole pine myself, but it is a prudent planting material.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go. I think I'll trust Mr. Denier's decision. Is there any objection that the motion passes? Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. All right, one more shot on this appeal section. Yeah, I read that already, but you want me to read it again? Just for the record, we'd like to, an individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission final decision. I'd like it. Hold on 1 second, guys. So I'd like to, at this time, case 2013-003, Covenant House, I'd like to entertain a motion to postpone. The motion by Commissioner Sawhill, seconded by Commissioner Tybor, to postpone this till 3/13/2013. Is there any opposition? That motion passes. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meeting is, 1, after staff presentation is completed on all public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. 2, the persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Urban Design Commission's rules of procedure. Petitioners, including his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when time has been reserved. Representatives of the groups, community councils, PTAs have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission's final decision. An individual may request written findings from any Commission decision within 7 days. Having said that, let's move on. At this time, we'll hear case 2013, University of Alaska Final Site Plan and Landscape Plan Review for Public Facility. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The University of Alaska Anchorage is requesting site plan review and final landscape plan review for the School of Engineering and Industry building, Phase 1, and a parking structure. I do want to note that in your packets, and I apologize for this, but there was a repetition of the staff report, so please ignore pages 18 through 32. The petitioner is requesting final landscape approval for the project but has not appeared before the Commission for concept landscape review. UAA is aware that they assume the risk in requesting a final approval. UAA is undertaking the construction of a new engineering building on Providence Drive and a new parking structure adjacent to the existing engineering building on UAA Drive. The overall project consists of 3 major components. Number 1, construction of the new 4-story, 81,500 square foot School of Engineering and Industry building on Providence Drive. 2, interior and exterior renovation of the existing 3-story engineering building on UAA Drive. And 3, construction of a multi-story structured parking facility with approximately 485 parking spaces on UAA Drive, with a skybridge connection to the existing engineering building. Parking structure will be completed prior to the construction of the engineering building so as not to displace required parking for more than 1 semester during the building of the new engineering facility. A related project is the realignment of Mallard Lane. This project is not part of this review, but will be done under an improvement to public place agreement with MOA Development Services. Because this facility or these projects are part of UAA and UAA is included in what we call the UMed plan, which is the Universities and Medical District Framework Master Plan. There are design guidelines in that document that are supposed to be evaluated and reviewed for any project that's built in this UMed district and comes under that plan. And I'm going to read from some of those design guidelines for this project. Under mix and arrangement of uses, the guideline reads, expand the local street and pedestrian circulation systems throughout the district to accommodate direct access between facilities. Does not comply. The parking structure does not show a sidewalk for the facility along UAA Drive. There is an existing sidewalk in front of the adjacent engineering building. A sidewalk should be included in the plans to meet the UMed district plan criteria for pedestrian circulation and the Anchorage pedestrian plan. Under parking structure for roadways, roadways is another one of the design guidelines, and it says design the circulation system to serve all users. In the past, some streets have been built to meet only vehicular needs, conflicting directly with the principles of the current plan. Under parking structure, the south side of the garage has a pedestrian entrance that connects to UAA Drive and the existing trail to Seawolf Drive. However, a sidewalk is not planned for the parking structure linking the existing engineering building to the garage and the future sidewalk along the realignment of Mallard Lane. The lack of a sidewalk for the facility is short-sighted in that it does not recognize that the garage is a component of the campus and thus needs to be part of the campus circulation system so that the needs of pedestrians and bicyclists are considered. Further, the UMed plan speaks to pedestrian and bicycle access, and it reads, expand the circulation system to provide safe and convenient access on foot and bicycle between all major destinations within and adjacent to the district. The proposed Skybridge connection helps to link the elevated pedestrian system, but steps should be taken to expand the surface pedestrian system so that safe and convenient access on foot and bicycles is possible between all major destinations within and adjacent to the UMed district. Missing links, such as the sidewalk connection, do not serve the intent of the guideline, which is to expand the circulation system. There appears to be an over-reliance on the elevated Skybridge system to serve students and staff without the recognition that the Skybridge system has limitations and cannot serve all pedestrian and bicycle access needs, and that sidewalks are also needed to serve students, staff, district employees, area residents, Seawolf shuttle, and people mover users and community members. Another guideline is to provide sidewalks on both sides of every street. Does not comply. The parking structure does not include a sidewalk on UAA Drive. UAA is a collector road, and municipal code requires sidewalks along both sides of the road. The realignment of Mallard Lane will be built to urban street standards, which will include sidewalks. I should say at this point that there was a meeting the other day concerning Mallard Drive, and I think the decision was to build that Mallard Drive to half-street standards, meaning that there will be a sidewalk on the south side of Mallard Drive, Mallard Lane. Another guideline is connect all streets to others at both ends to create a flexible grid. Similarly, connect all sidewalks, trails, and walkways to one another or to building entrances. Does not comply. By not providing a sidewalk for the parking structure, it does not have a sidewalk connection to the adjacent engineering building. Further, the undeveloped lot to the north of the garage will be constructed with a university building in the future and would also need a sidewalk along UAA Drive. If you look in your packets at this time for the parking structure, which is the section in the back of your plans on sheet C110, you'll see where they have located the parking garage, and that lot just to the north where the existing Mallard Drive is, that lot will be developed in the future. And so what staff is saying at this point is that when that lot is developed, it's going to need a sidewalk also, of course, and that since they are planning or will have to put a sidewalk on the south side of Mallard Lane, we want to see that sidewalk come in and then a new sidewalk that would pick up where the existing sidewalk is now in front of the engineering building. The lack of a sidewalk for the parking garage would result in a missing link in the pedestrian circulation system that would cause safety concerns and inconvenience to all UMed district users. Okay, now to speak a little bit about landscaping, and this is in regard to the engineering building. And I did speak to the landscape architect about this, and it concerns that serpentine hedge along Providence Drive in the front of the engineering building, between the engineering building and Providence Drive. And the shrubs that were chosen for it will have a really striking appearance in the winter because they have a red-colored stems. And the shrub loses its leaves, and so the stems really stand out against the snow. But the problem is that the moose really love red twig dogwood, and it's likely, in my experience, they eat the shrub right down to the ground. And Mr. Briggs and I did talk about that, and he was going to look at another shrub to substitute for this, so he may be telling us a bit more about that tonight. Also, for the engineering building landscaping, the landscape plan for the engineering building shows a location for snow storage on the north side of the structure on sheet L103. Snow storage is shown situated in a lawn area between trees. This is not a feasible location given snow plowing practices, as having a truck enter this area and carefully maneuver between trees and likely damaging the lawn is an unworkable solution. So I think they were going to have to rethink snow storage for that, and they may tell us tonight that they're going to take it somewhere else. We'll find out. Also, this area also contains the underground stormwater detention basin as shown on sheet L100. The trees shown in the same location and on sheet L103 may not thrive given that the fill material on top of the storm tech chambers or similar may limit the amount of topsoil available for the trees. So I had a question about that, how well the trees would thrive on top of that fill material. That's all I have.
Are there any questions of staff?
Oh, I did want to also mention that you'll notice in your packet, and I see there are some neighbors in the audience tonight that will want to speak, and there is some material in the packet concerning that. On page 51 of your packet, UAA had a meeting with the University Area Community Council, and they listed the questions that the Community Council had, and then UAA attempted to answer each of those questions. So that's in your packet. And then laid on the table tonight is a resolution from the University Area Community Council with some concerns also.
Commissioner Sawhill.
Excuse me. One of my first concerns is the master plan doesn't show a parking garage at that location. So shouldn't they come in with a modified master plan before they come in with this site plan approval?
Through the chair, Mr. Sawhill, UAA, I believe, is working on the update of their master plan. I think it's been awarded. I don't know how far along they are in developing that master plan, but you may, ask that question of the petitioner, but in terms of when they think their master plan will be complete. But I think it's, fair to consider that when this master plan was developed, that, that it wasn't envisioned at that time that a parking garage would be in that place. And they did do a study. I think they had a consultant do a study for them that looked at various locations for the parking structure, and they considered several different sites, and it seemed that this location that they've chosen best met their needs.
Okay. I read some comments from the community that they're concerned about the increased traffic on the adjoining road, and normally a TIA would be prepared before the design was submitted, but none was completed. Why was that?
It's been completed, and the traffic engineer is reviewing it right now. In fact, she may have just finished it last Friday, or she's finished it just, recently, but, or even, today. But it's either, I haven't heard whether or not she's approved it, but I know that I talked to her on Friday, and she was trying to get it done. So it's imminent if it hasn't already been approved.
Then my last question is staff's condition number 15. I was having a difficulty understanding it. You want an additional sidewalk?
Yes. If you look in your packet, that was a comment that came from the, it's on page 41 and 42 from Lori Skanke, the non-motorized transportation coordinator. This was a comment from her. She shows it on page 42 what that route would look like. I asked her to include this in it because I had just gotten the written portion of it, and I had the same question. It's kind of hard to follow, so she did this sketch to illustrate that.
Okay, so it's on the east side of the building.
Yes.
You want additional sidewalk.
If that,
All right. West side? Okay.
yeah, as shown on the drawing, it's the west side.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Are there any other questions of the staff? Hearing none, we'll move on. I'd like to call the petitioner forward.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Tanya Hickok, H-I-C-K-O-K, civil engineer, planner, and partner with Dell HKM. Tonight we are representing the University of Alaska Anchorage. With me tonight in the audience is Chris Turtolides, the UAA's Associate Vice Chancellor of Facilities and Campus Services, John Fonts, Director of UAA Facilities Planning and Construction, John Hansen, the Senior Project Manager for UAA Facilities and Construction, Paul Doherty and Tom Livingston, architects with Livingston Sloan, Gary Katzen and Andrew Ohms with Kittleson Associates, as well as Peter Briggs, landscape architect with Corvus Design, and Michelle Ritter, our land use planner with Dell HKM. As staff has mentioned, we are before you tonight for a public facility site plan review, as well as a final landscape review for the School of Engineering and Industry building, as well as the parking structure and the existing renovations to the existing engineering building. As you know, this use is a permitted use within the PLI zoning district, and as staff has mentioned, it covers three main components. The new School of Engineering building, which is about 80,000 square feet, located north of Providence Drive, as depicted on this aerial. There are several pedestrian connections to the west. There's a connection to the parking lot, and to the east there is a connection right at the corner of Spirit and Providence, directly connected with a ADA accessibility route to the bus stop. There is a utility yard on the north side of the building that is fenced and screened with also with some landscaping. It's used for student use for outdoor activities, as well as quite a bit of open area for seating, as well as snow storage. And there is also a UAA shuttle stop proposed on the north side at the drive aisle. The new parking structure is 4 stories in level. However, the first level is about 8 feet below grade from UAA Drive. So when you took at the total elevation at the highest point, it's about 41 feet tall, which is actually shorter than the existing engineering building that is located south of the proposed parking structure. As staff also mentioned, we are proposing to realign Mallard Lane into the existing right-of-way. Mallard actually kind of skews through the petitioner's parcel, and so we are actually moving it out into the right-of-way. We did meet with the municipal engineer and building safety director yesterday and have agreed to half-street urban standards, and so we will be obtaining that through the IPP process. We do propose a pedestrian bridge from the parking structure to the existing engineering building at the second level. It's important to note that we do take into consideration highly the pedestrian access for the parking structure on the south side of the parking structure. We want to locate all the pedestrians funneling into the parking structure from the south side. There is no access for pedestrians on the north side of the building. There's only an emergency access stairwell, which is alarmed. As well as there will also be a park and ride shuttle located at the south entrance of the parking structure. The existing engineering building will be renovated. It is currently a 1980s building and is significantly undersized. Average state schools have about 135 square feet of area per student. UAA currently only has 40 square feet per student. So it's dramatically undersized. And with this additional square footage that they're adding for the engineering building, it will bring it up to 120 square feet. So still less than the average for state schools for engineering students, but bringing it up much closer. And the exterior improvements that will happen at the existing engineering building will be very similar, if not exactly the same, with the proposed new engineering building. Kittleson did prepare a traffic impact analysis. It is, I believe, second or third review with Stephanie Marmello, the traffic engineer. And we believe that the ultimate recommendation, we gave her 3 options for improvements at the intersection of Mallard and UAA Drive, of signalizing the intersection, doing a roundabout at the intersection, or having a left turn prohibition at the intersection. We have heard some feedback that the signalization and roundabout is not likely going to be the recommended approval, but rather the left turn prohibition. So that is what we're planning for. There's also an existing HSIP, so a Highway Safety Improvement Program improvement that is planned at Northern Lights and UAA Drive. So it is federally funded, but is being executed by DOT, but it's a municipal project. And at that project, they are going to be adding an additional lane, so there'll be 2 left turns from westbound Northern Lights south into UAA Drive. So now UAA Drive southbound will be 2 lanes instead of 1. And with our project, we propose to extend that southbound right turn lane as a right turn lane only, so that the vehiclers can move over to the right-hand lane and turn directly into Mallard, which will then go into the driveway for the new parking structure. We have reviewed the case packet, and I did have a couple of requested conditions of approval modifications. I did write them out, in-track changes for you. We have no concerns with conditions 1 through 4 as written. However, condition number 5, I would request a slight modification to add resolve the need to obtain the WMS watercourse mapping summer before May 31st, 2013 and start of site development. The reason why I'm requesting this is because we actually already had, HKM had environmental scientists go out last summer and already field survey this area. We have GIS data mapping. We are currently in SACE, so core permitting. There was an additional small area of wetland that was added, as well as we did identify the stream that was an area of concern for WMS. And so we have that notated, and it was outside of the project boundary, the setback. And so we don't believe that we actually have to go back out and do any mapping. So I'd like to say resolve the need. Number 7. It says enter into an IPP agreement with PME for the realignment of Mallard. I've been doing IPP improvement to public places agreements for several years, and I have never seen them done in less than 3 months. And most recently, my last 3 projects, they've only been able to be completed 6 to 9 months after application. It's a very lengthy legal process. It's paperwork. We agree to the improvements. It's just the matter of entering into the agreement that takes a significant amount of time. And with our construction project planning to start this spring, we have concerns that will not be able to be handled prior to us wanting to obtain the footing and foundation permit. And so we'd like to modify that to say apply for the improvements to public places agreement. To not slow up the construction progress. On number 8, we are requesting, again, a modification to say resolve the need to provide a sidewalk with the municipal engineer. We began discussions with the municipal engineer yesterday about this specific sidewalk. He has agreed to discuss it with us in further detail. If you look at that image that was prepared by Ms. Skanke on page 42, you'll note that the area that she's requesting the sidewalk actually has a pretty significant grade difference. It's 8 foot up and then another 4 feet down. And so to get an ADA accessible walkway through there is very unlikely not to be either to even be ADA accessible, as well as the fact that you're creating a problem by funneling students across Providence Drive, jaywalking through that area. We are providing ADA accessible pedestrian facilities from the transit stop to the east, going to the main entrance, or excuse me, the back entrance, the entrance off Spirit Way and Providence Drive, which is fully visible from Providence Drive. You can see it right there. And to make that cut through to go to the front of the building seems very dangerous, and we don't really want to create a hazard for the pedestrians, and so we'd rather not have to do that. We are, like I said, discussing that. Oh, I'm sorry, that was number 15. We want that one stricken completely. Number 8 was the one along Mallard Lane. Okay, so Mallard Lane and UAA Drive. Now, that we did discuss with the municipal engineer, and we have reviewed the HSIP project, which does not include any sidewalks north of Mallard Lane. So all that is doing is widening, adding lanes, has no plans to add any sidewalks. UAA is not planning any future plans for the north side of the parking structure. They don't have anything in the plans for now. In the future, if that was to come about, of course that would make sense if there was pedestrian need. But with our existing parking structure, we're funneling all our pedestrians to a safe entrance at the south side of the parking structure. There's bike trails. Let's see if I can show you a quick figure. That one. So in this figure, you can see how we have how can I point that to that? There's a bike trail. So from the right side of the page down around the cul-de-sac, that's an existing bike trail. And so we are going to realign it slightly so it stays in place. And then the access, the pedestrian access with the pedestrian bridge is overhead, as well as the bus stop, which is right there at the end of that cul-de-sac. So we're funneling all the pedestrians to that specific south side, and we aren't allowing pedestrians on the north side of the building. So there is no need from this project's perspective to add pedestrian means to the north side. There is a separated trail on the east side of UAA Drive, which people do use, and we don't have any prohibition against that. But we believe that the need for through the UMed plan and the comprehensive plan to add this sidewalk on the west side of UAA Drive, that's more of a global need for that area. And it would be more appropriate to have UAA and the municipality try to petition the legislature to have funding to do an improvement for sidewalks along the entire length of UAA Drive than have this project suffer that cost, because they're already having to do several off-site improvements for this project. And then 9 was a simple revision for landscape clarity, just to state that there are other means of barriers besides chain link fencing. And 15 is the one that has the grade separation and that we didn't feel was necessary. So with that, I'll let Chris, if there's anything he'd like to add. How many minutes do we have left?
Lots.
Chris.
My name's Chris Terlides, Turletes. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities at UAA. First, I want to say thanks for your service on this commission, and we appreciate the opportunity to present the project. Tonight, your approval allows us to proceed with plans to construct about $123 million worth of facilities for educating engineers for the state of Alaska. So again, we appreciate your consideration on this, and we have the technical team here to answer the questions. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Remain for rebuttal. We'll keep the remaining time for rebuttal.
That's correct, but I've got to determine it. So.
Okay.
Are there any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Sullivan.
Normally, this is a two-part process. It's a very high-profile project. My concern is that the buildings have very long facades, both of the buildings. I see a perspective of the main School of Engineering and Industry building, that it's not from Providence Drive. I know that there's another long building in the opposite side. I'm concerned that I don't see anything that shows the scale in context. Are we creating multi-story tunnel per the Universities and Medical District Framework Master Plan? Building mass, design buildings so that their apparent bulk does not overwhelm the size and character of nearby buildings, woodlands, and other open spaces and trails. Avoid features such as large blank walls that increase the apparent bulk of the building. Also, as an example, where community is moving towards adopting the design standards, which call for wall modulation. Each building elevation that faces the street should be modulated. The wall and foundation line should be offset at intervals so that there is at least one offset every 140 feet of wall length that varies the depth of the building wall by a minimum of 12 feet. I feel that the buildings are very long. The main building in front of the other building. I feel it's a little overwhelming. And also, I feel that the parking garage is too close to the road, and there's some treatment in the south side. I believe that there's an opportunity to create a different treatment in the facade that faces the main street next. Will you have an objection if we'll add a condition that calls for additional articulation with materials and plane changes for the main building and maybe a little facade treatment to the parking garage?
So I guess I'm not sure exactly what the question is. So this is the version of the parking garages you see along Providence Drive. So as you're going east on Providence Drive, this is on the north side of the road. I wouldn't call it a blank wall. I'd call it a lot of glass. There is some definition to the wall. There's plans for a future connection across Providence Drive to the Health Science Building on the other side of the street. So I think I don't agree with I guess your interpretation that it's a plain blank wall on the engineering building.
Well, it's a 300 feet long building, and just by reading the wall modulation in the new design standards, maybe it will give you a perception of what's the feel of not having a change in plane. We have just 2 bay windows. I mean, there's some windows, but it feels a little overwhelming that not having any relief in the facade.
Tom Livingston, architect, Livingston Sloan, Livingston. This particular facade has a variety of materials. There's a stone tile at the base, much like there is across the street at the Health Sciences Building. We've developed a vocabulary on the south side at the Health Sciences Building that we're relating to with this one. It's not a direct copy, but we wanted it to be related so people would understand the connection between the 2 buildings on one campus. There is articulation in fenestration, the puncture windows. This large corner window you see on the end is transparent. It has a transparency to it it's a 2-story space, so light will be going in and emanating from it in the darkness. The stair tower is clad also in stone tile. The primary part of the building is clad in metal with an articulation between the panels, much like, again, the Health Sciences Building on the other side of the street. As Mr. Terlides noted, there is a plan for a heated connector corridor that would span, it would be a bridge spanning Providence Drive over to the Health Sciences Building, which again, it creates an articulation and vocabulary there within the parkway. It's a 4-lane parkway, 2 lanes each way with boulevard trees down the middle. It's a separation between these 2 buildings. It's not exactly a canyon. It's probably more like, is it a couple hundred feet?
Yeah, well, I'm Paul Doherty with Livingston Sloan, DAUGHERTY. The Health Sciences Building, actually the utility setbacks on the south side of Providence are about 100 feet or more. So the Health Sciences Building is quite a ways away. The Health Sciences Building is quite a ways away from the street. The pedestrian connection that Tom and Chris have alluded to is approximately 230 feet long. So that's the distance between the buildings at this end. This building actually flares away from the other building, and the Health Sciences Building itself also has an angle to the street. So it's not truly a straight canyon.
It is not, but it's a little. I was concerned about that, and what is your thoughts on treating the facade of the parking garage? You have in the south side a different treatment between, it seems like between, you have the corners that have a treatment, and then you have a different treatment, and then you have the tower.
Just one quick note, too, on the new engineering building. The Health Sciences building complies with the same, or was built within the same regulations that you're citing here, and so we're just using the same sort of vocabulary in responding in this solution.
So the renewal of the existing engineering building...
Hold on one second. Since you guys are switching back and forth, and because this is a public hearing, and the hearing may need to be transcribed, every time you speak, please restate your name for the record. Thank you. Just your last name would be fine.
Terlides. So the facade for the renewal of the existing engineering building will be similar to the siding that goes on to the new science building. We're carrying that across the spine, a lot of glass and similar siding, and into the towers. So both of the towers are cladded with, again, siding that, as Tom would say, makes the brings the vocabulary of all three structures together and makes them aesthetically similar. We went through several variations of materials for the parking garage with our Board of Regents, and again, what they expect from us is a structure that's functional and reasonable and blends nicely with the environment. We again used the metal panels on the towers to help with that blending. We have dimensioned the concrete sides of the parking garage to look like the metal panels, but they will be sacked concrete construction on those walls.
Thank you.
This is Livingston. The placement of the building of the garage is really sort of wedged between wetlands on the west and then UAA Drive on the east. So there's really no room to move it east and west. It's placed by those sorts of limitations. And there is also a setback from a residence on the northwest corner, 85-foot setback on university property. So there's a buffer zone that's been placed in there for that purpose.
Commissioner Sahil.
Why didn't you update the master plan before you brought this before us?
Terlides. Our master plan approval goes through our Board of Regents, and we did update our master plan with the Board of Regents. So we have a December 12 master plan update that we can provide to staff for prior to the Regents approving the project.
Was the master plan shared with the community through that Regent process, or do you make that decision and then inform the community later?
So our Regent meetings are open meetings. Did we take so a couple of things are going on. We have engaged the community we're currently developing a new master plan, so we have engaged the community with that new master plan, asking for community input. So we're in about mid-phase of that master plan develop. So we have gone out to the community and talked to them about it. And this engineering building and the parking structure are on that master plan that we shared with the community. We've engaged certainly the neighbors adjacent to us with the planning through the last year or so of the process. We've been in the process, iterative process, through our various Regents approvals for over a year. Those are open meetings, and the community is welcome. So the four community councils that surround the university had benefit of listening to or participating in our master plan data collection, and two of the community councils immediately adjacent to the campus, Rogers Park and University Area Community Council, got the benefit of a presentation on the project.
I guess this just seems out of order to me. It seems like putting a parking garage on UAA Drive is a pretty significant change to the neighborhood, and it seems like that process should run its course before the project comes to us, is my thinking at this point, and I'm a little uncomfortable taking this out of order.
Tanya Hickok. Just to clarify, the UAA master plan process is not required to be approved through the municipality. It's a guiding document for the university that they use internally for them to guide them in where to place their buildings and their structures. So it's not necessarily a municipally required approval process, but more an internal guiding document.
Okay. So then when these get launched on us, we can just make the decisions then, huh? I guess I would make a statement that I would share Monica's concerns over the elevations. The elevations seem, this is an engineering building, but it's pretty boring. I was a little underwhelmed with the elevations. The elevation that probably concerns me the most is the parking structure. I was a little disappointed with the location. I would have liked to have seen the parking structure pushed back a little bit. And since you had constraints with the neighbors and the wetlands and you didn't push it back, then you chose to do nothing special with the elevations to make it pleasing from UAA Drive. So is there something you can do with the elevations on UAA Drive except having a concrete building for us to look at?
It's an artistic rendering of the south side, the south stair tower from UAA Drive, looking south, correct? Okay, so it's the north stair tower. And it will be landscaped all along. I believe it's visual enhancement landscaping?
Yeah, 5 foot to 6 foot.
Yeah, one row of evergreen.
Visual enhancement landscaping.
Which is not what that is indicating to me.
There is about a 30-foot right-of-way adjacent from the from the edge of pavement to the property line. There are existing stances of trees within that right-of-way. That's another reason why we're not proposing to add a sidewalk in that area, because we would lose significant tree coverage from that sidewalk pathway.
Mr. Chair, could I ask the petitioner a question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Tanya or whoever's got control of it, could you put up the east elevation? Or let's see, maybe the east elevation of the building that was included in the packet?
I don't think I have that.
Well, I think, okay.
You'll have to look inside the packet.
On your packets, I think that's maybe a truer rendition of some of the things we're seeing up on the screen. Give the page number, but it doesn't have a page number.
It is right after the site plan.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have for now. I have some questions on the modifications to conditions of approval, but I'll wait till the rest of the public hearing's over and I can hear some other testimony, and then I'll quiz the petitioner on some of those. I have time to think about this more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sahel. Are there any further questions? I have a couple of questions. First of all, this is more, in the parking garage, is the entire parking garage LED lighting?
I don't know if, Doherty, I don't know if all of the lighting is LED lighting. The poles on the top of the garage are LED, and the lights that run up the driveway are LED. I don't know if within the garage itself are all LED.
The reason why I ask is just with the energy issues and gas, it would seem to think if you're going to build a parking garage, why not put lower burning energy to light it on the inside?
They may be. I'm a project manager. There's another architect running the job, and I don't know that level of detail within the garage.
I have another question about the condition 15 we discussed earlier. I'm not too crazy about striking that cut through in a sense that, I mean, if it's just an elevation issue, how far out is the Sky Bridge connection to health science? I mean, is that 10 years away, 5 years away?
Mr. Ladies, we're just now engaging the engineering team, so it's a couple years away.
Okay. And
can I address the sidewalk, Mr. Chair?
yes.
So on the deliberately by design, we expect students that are coming from campus are going to come down through this sidewalk or across the parking lot into the northwest door. We expect students coming from housing or from other parts of UAA that are using the sidewalk would cross at this signalized intersection, or if they're coming from Health Sciences building, they cross at this signalized intersection into this east door. So we think that adding a sidewalk across the mid-block is not what not encouraging good pedestrian flow. That we're encouraging folks either to stop their vehicle on the street and drop somebody off, or run across the street. So again, the building is oriented to get access and egress for pedestrians at controlled intersection at Spirit and Providence, along campus through the walkway, and along campus through the driveway.
And so that's assuming that students coming from, I guess, K building side west campus would just come through the inside of the parking lot, basically, rather than come down the bike trail. Say if you were at K building, which is on the west side, clear over on Lake Otis, if you had classes in that complex, the business side complex, and you had to catch a class at engineering, I would think if I was on a bike, I would run right straight down the bike path, cross the intersection, just stay, rather than going inside the campus, all the way through the business park, you basically just jump out to the sidewalk and run down the sidewalk and then cut up. I guess you could go all the way to Spirit Drive and go around, but natural instinct, being young, would be just to get there the shortest distance possible. So I mean, just...
So there are many routes, probably, as there are students. I would say if I were coming from K building and came using the sidewalk, I'd cross at the controlled intersection here, come into the parking garage and park my bike where the parking facilities are.
Okay. Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Skanke's comment was to the point that being that you have a door on that side of the building, anyone wanting to get out on the sidewalk, their only access to that sidewalk is at the far north end of that building. That's the only way to get out. So if you have classes or you're at the south end, or no, you'd be at either the west end or the east end. So if you've got classes on the west end of that building, rather than having to walk all the way through the building and come out that exit to reach the sidewalk, I think people, are either a sidewalk is provided or people are just going to make their own, because I think students are going to walk to that sidewalk. And so it's either they're going to do it themselves and just wear a path there. And I think that's what Ms. Genke's point is. They're going to just wear a path through there on their own. And in terms of doing a mid-block crossing, I think that's really unlikely, because at that median that's shown in the drawing, there's a big elevation difference. You'd have to be part mountain goat to get up there. Plus, there's heavily treed. And so I doubt very much that anyone's going to try and cross mid-block there. But I think they will want to get out onto that sidewalk.
Does the sidewalk path that cuts through the parking lot on Seawolf Drive, is that existing now on sheet C106?
What page number is that?
Civil sheet 106.
Is there a page number in the packet?
Packet number 99.
99, thank you.
Hickok, yes, that's an existing pathway.
I think that pretty much solves, you can access through, you just have to ride through the parking lot. Will there be any bike racks on every door, or just is there a certain, I guess this question would be for Peter.
Peter Briggs, Principal Landscape Architect with Corvus Design. There are bicycle racks shown at the northwest entry to the building. And it looks like the details might not have made it into this packet, but I think there's enough for 10 bicycles being provided.
Okay, great.
And then just as a comment relating to the question of the trail, the campus wants to avoid having stairs in exterior conditions. It's just not a safe thing to do. Within that area to the west of that entry, if there were to be stairs provided up to a sidewalk that was on the parking lot area there, it's just stairs are not a safe condition on a site. Even if you provide a cover on them, they wind up being iced and they're prone to safety issues.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see where the cut through is from right at the corner of Seawolf and Prov Drive. That actually exists right now, and so you can. That's only in 100 feet from where was proposed. So I think that's sufficient. Are there any further questions? Seeing no further questions, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for public testimony. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak? Please come forward, state your name. We can kind of form a queue line.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Orson Smith. I'm currently the Dean of the School of Engineering at UAA, and I hope to take a few minutes here to speak about the need for these buildings and perhaps give you a little context in your deliberations. The School of Engineering traces its origins back to 1961, when graduate courses were taught here in Anchorage. And since that time, we have grown. The most remarkable growth in terms of enrollment has been since the year 2000. We had 293 students in the school, and last fall we had 1,190. That's an increase of over 450%. Of those nearly 1,200, over 90%, 1,065 last fall, were Alaska residents, and approximately 1,000 of those were from the commuting range, city of Anchorage, Matsu, and south. So these are our sons and daughters. We're training for a high-demand, high-paying, exciting profession. The school offers undergraduate degrees in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and computer systems engineering. We also offer degrees in computer science, geomatics, and graduate degrees in project management, civil engineering, applied environmental science and technology, engineering management. And we have some other graduate programs for professional development of our colleagues. Many of them are alumni that work in this city. The city is the place where almost all the engineering industry of Alaska works. So we have been in need for a long time. In my time at UAA, since 1998, following a 20-year career with the Corps of Engineers, we've basically been on a campaign to increase our space. The success that we've made in most recent years resulted a few years ago following a statewide study of needs that recognized needs both here in Anchorage and at Fairbanks. So we have been campaigning to get a big project funded on both campuses, and ours involves a parking garage because of municipality requirements, ordinances. We're using up parking, so we're replacing it with this garage. But from my point of view, from my colleagues and the faculty and all of our students and alumni, what we hope for is a standard that matches other states. You heard that we are less than a third of what another state would offer for engineering education in space. And Anchorage is a great city. It deserves a great university on a par with any state in the union. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing none. Will the next person who'd like to speak come forward? State your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Paul Stang. I'm speaking on behalf of the University Area Community Council. Last Wednesday, our council passed a resolution, which you have a copy of. I hope you've seen it. First, I want to emphasize that the University Area Community Council supports vibrant, environmentally sound development within the campus. We are in strong support of that. And we have no problems with the notion of an engineering building. Unfortunately, what we're not seeing is that sound development. The process that the garage took started about a year ago, but the public didn't learn about it until this past November, after UAA had given copies of the detailed plans to the Muni. That has caused our community council substantial concerns. It seems that UAA didn't come to the community this last fall to ask us for our views, our concerns, and our suggestions, but simply to tell us what's going to happen. That's not a meaningful public participation in any way. And clearly, this is not the first UAA building without the opportunity for early public involvement. Here we are at the 11th hour, at the step just before permits can be issued, and we have the first and only brief opportunity for public testimony for a project financed by public funds. The master plan is a key issue for us. The garage project appears to have slipped in the side door of the master plan. The plan identifies the site on which the garage is located as for academic buildings. We understand, as you've heard, that the internal master plan amendment is underway, also without the benefit of any public involvement. And there's no way that we can speak to that change. So the UDC gets to decide on another shovel-ready project, conceived, located, and designed without public input, even by the communities most affected. Furthermore, not a single change has yet been made in response to the concerns that we expressed since learning about the garage. The UAA master planning process, as well as its specific planning, project planning process, is seriously broken. UAA has policies and vision statements emphasizing sustainability, environment, and health. Those values need to be built into a thorough, reliable master plan before UAA constructs any more buildings. Now, I'd like to just talk about some specific substantive concerns. The February 6th resolution details some of those. A couple of us met with the UAA staff and contractors last Friday, and we were pleased to be able to do that. We had two concerns that we thought then had been relieved by their explanations. One of them was the visibility of the garage from Goose Lake Park. We hope that's the case, that it won't be visible. The other one we thought had been resolved, and that is that we are really worried about students walking straight across UAA Drive from the garage. But UAA assured us because of that south bridge is the only way that students are going to be able to go. We felt relieved. Unfortunately, with the new turn here of adding sidewalks, we're right back where our prime concern was about students walking straight across the garage, straight across UAA Drive to get to paths and other places. But there's still other serious issues that remain. Instead of building the garage in one of the existing paved parking lots that's closer to the engineering building, for instance, there's a parking lot directly across from the engineering building on the back, behind the health sciences building, where a parking garage could be put. And anyway, there's a sky bridge plan to go right across UAA Drive to that. That would be a better place. There are other lots we feel would be a better place, rather than cutting down mature trees, clearing an area to make room for a garage, clearing a green area. Now, this is another twist to the issue of the traffic problem at UAA Drive and Northern Lights. Traffic on UAA Drive is bumper to bumper at critical times during the day. The garage will add 300 cars to UAA Drive at the peak PM traffic point. Furthermore, as you know, the State Department of Transportation is modifying the intersection, as you heard, of Northern Lights Boulevard and UAA Drive to lower the very high accident rate there. The DOT plans to add an additional southbound lane to the existing southbound lane of UAA Drive. I'll have to move out fast. These lanes merge into a single lane further down UAA Drive. But UAA wants to convert that right lane into a turn right only lane to get to the parking garage, whereas most of the cars going south on UAA Drive will want to continue through to Providence. We think that it will substantially complicate DOT's ability to to go down that way, and it will cause a dangerous bob and weave fest along UAA Drive. Furthermore, the pedestrian crosswalk just north of Providence Drive causes numerous traffic backups on UAA Drive. This right-of-way is convenient for pedestrians, but cars must stop for every student or group of students while the nearby Sky Bridge goes usually wholly unused. UAA Drive has provided no solutions to this serious problem that's been going on for years. Yet UAA wants to fast-track this building this garage building, adding more traffic. Every UAA student can ride the Metro bus and the campus shuttle buses free. UAA Drive, UAA and the community would be far better served instead of building the garage at this point, but instead encourage strong use of public transit. Thanks for the opportunity to express views.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Commissioner Sawhill.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Great. Sure. staff is proposing that we add a condition to provide sidewalks along UAA Drive, and so is it the council's position you would prefer not to see those?
I haven't asked the council that, so I don't know, but I can give you my view. We've heard a couple times here that students like to take the most direct route. I think that's typically true. Well, if you're parked in the garage and you're running to class, one thing you can do is just dash right across UAA Drive. Students are walking back and forth, as you might know, just south of Providence over and over. They don't wait. They expect the cars to stop. Somehow, we've not killed any students yet that way, but I don't know why. Here we have another opportunity. Skip right across UAA Drive. I think it's very dangerous.
We have the staff packet that's before us in the drawings, and then we have the conditions of approval that staff has recommended. Are you suggesting any changes to the condition of approval or any changes to the design that would make this project more acceptable to the community?
I think the best change to this design is to relocate that garage somewhere else where you don't have all these complex problems of being right next to wetlands, of actually destroying a small, tiny bit of wetlands and getting rid of new green space. As I said, other parking lots already paved would be better locations, and one, as an example, is right across behind what they call it, the Health and Sciences building, which would be closer to the engineering building than this would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
I'm Kristen Hansen, and I represent the Widgeon Condo Association. We are normally big supporters of UAA and would love to see the engineering program continue to grow, but we do urge you to reject the plan tonight. This is a flawed, a non-collaborative, and a blitzkrieg plan. There are objective reasons to be skeptical of UAA's numbers and proposals. For example, a small survey of students and their actual parking patterns seems to indicate that the lot that is being replaced may be a high turnover lot. This means that during the day, 2 or 3 or more different cars will park in that space. If all the current users are shifted to the proposed garage, this means the traffic will shift to UAA Drive. Then the numbers start to look like 1,000 cars a day shifted to UAA Drive. UAA presents numbers such as on your page 51 that point to 200 or 300 cars at peak, but that number is misleading in what it omits. 1,000 cars a day is not minimal impact. What also forcefully argues for denial tonight are UAA's own visions for future road development related to Mallard Lane and UAA Drive. Student leaders at UAA informed us that UAA had a conceptual master plan that included a future loop road, and this unfunded, only conceptual, but wished-for road has never been disclosed by UAA at any public community council meeting. However, we do note that Friday, February 8th, in conference with 2 UMed council members, UAA rather belatedly, but at least honorably, did share the conceptual plan the students had told us about. Why is this wished-for loop road relevant to tonight's decision? Because UAA's wished-for road terminates in a UAA Drive roundabout, and notably this envisioned roundabout aligns with tonight's proposed relocation of Mallard Lane. Also notable and worrisome is that UAA's wished-for road comes within 175 feet of Goose Lake and appears to cross protected wetlands. Community opposition to both elements will be very strong. Hopefully, UAA will listen to community objections, including the objections of its own environmentally concerned students. Yet if a compromise layout for the desired road is reached, the envisioned roundabout on UAA Drive would also move. This means that Mallard Lane would need to be moved again to align with the envisioned roundabout. The translation of this, in our view, is that UAA's long-term conceptual plans and needs that requires a fix for what is decided on tonight means more state dollars, more beautiful landscape needlessly sacrificed because of a hasty and non-collaborative Garage and Mallard Lane piece of proposal. We ask the UDC to thereby reject UAA's proposal tonight and its piecemeal disclosures. We would also urge the UDC to strongly request immediate, collaborative, comprehensive strategic planning in this environmentally sensitive and valuable UMED region close to Goose Lake before any further woodland is touched by anyone. On behalf of the Anchorage community, the UDC should insist that the institutions and related community councils commence an immediate short series of strategic, comprehensive planning meetings. These meetings should have a direct land use planning focus and more community votes than currently appear on the municipality's UMED District Planning Update Committee. Participants should arrive at the strategic planning meeting with all envisioned needs and plans for the next 7 to 10 years. The UDC could motivate institutions to full disclosure by indicating that any tentative or even wished-for construction plans that are not disclosed during these immediate strategic plans meetings would de facto not be approved by the UDC for the next 5 to 7 years. Clearly, no one, institutions, community councils, condo associations, would leave these meetings with all their first choices and all their heart's desires. But a mutually livable, comprehensive plan can be collaboratively achieved. The growth needs of these institutions can be accommodated, while the larger Anchorage community's reason and foresight for designating Goose Lake as park can be properly and fully respected. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions? I have one question. Where is Widgeon Condos located?
It is off Widgeon Lane, which feeds onto UAA Drive.
Thank you. Next. Please step forward.
My name's Russ Kell, and I live on Wesleyan Drive. I think it's interesting, first of all, that the legislature, and I'm talking about the state legislature, hasn't completely funded this project yet. Okay, I guess they're going to consider that during this session. And when they consider that, I'd like them to think not only of the square footage that's now allotted to the engineering folks, but also to the general square footage that's allotted to the university, because they can allot as much as they wish to the engineering department. The other thing I'd like to talk about briefly is UAA Drive and Northern Lights. There's a several million-dollar project that's going to be going in there, increasing the lanes. The reason is because of the number of accidents that have happened there. I don't know how to explain this, but one of the reasons the accidents are happening over there is because of the type of planning that we're seeing here tonight. Okay? If the planning had been done properly before, those accidents would not have occurred, and now we have millions of dollars that's going to be spent to address this one area. And at the community council, the person that presented this said, well, it's federal money. Well, excuse me. What that means right now is that 43% of that money, either myself or my children are going to have to repay. So I'd like to see the money being spent a little bit better. I'd like to close with one other thing, and that is that the University Community Council worked with the UMED and UAA on the master plan. And apparently that's not important, because now they're saying that the master plan isn't really needed by you folks. Well, I'm wondering why they worked with us in the first place. And the other thing I'm concerned about is the taxes. When the university expands, there's a tax burden on the backs of everybody in Anchorage, okay, relative to traffic and everything else, police, everything, okay? And I'd like to see the state legislature take a little bigger bite of that, and that we would therefore have a smaller cost. That's about it. Thank you for your time.
Can you spell your last name for me, please?
Oh, Kell, K-E-L-L.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Susan Share, S-H-A-R-E. I live off of UAA Drive, and I am a member of the University Area Community Council. I'll be talking about Goose Lake Park because it is adjacent to and affected by how UAA develops its property. In 1956, the Army Corps of Engineers and the National Park Service deeded the land for Goose Lake Park to the municipality of Anchorage and restricted its use to recreational purposes. In 1978, the city fully repaid the land debt and adopted a resolution guaranteeing recreational use of the property in perpetuity. In 2008, a park user remarked, "It's hard to believe the park is in the city." And indeed, Goose Lake Park is in a busy midtown section. It is a refuge and an asset for Anchorage's diverse community, including UAA students, faculty, and employees. This wetland area is also summer home to migrating birds, including Arctic loons, grebes, mallards, and sometimes swans. But recent building by UAA in the vicinity of the park has had an impact on the natural setting and serenity of Goose Lake. The factory-like science center looms over the lake, and its tall vent stacks have a constant loud hum, not blending with the environment. Last week, I saw the map of the campus that Kristen spoke of that lays out a concept of a loop road that UAA is considering. It's tied to the location of the garage and would further degrade Goose Lake Park. In preparation for the garage, as Kristen mentioned, UAA is straightening Mallard Lane and moving the intersection with UA Drive further north to its designated right-of-way. But in the future, in order to create the loop road around the pedestrian campus core, UAA would like to extend Alumni Drive to join with Mallard Lane. However, once Mallard Lane is moved north, the extension they are contemplating would call for UAA to acquire municipal wetlands close to Goose Lake. The loop road would run through them and intrude on the park. It would be far simpler, cheaper, and would not disrupt the wetlands if UAA left Mallard Lane where it is and linked it with Alumni Drive. Piecemeal planning creates obstacles for sound future growth. Goose Lake Park is a treasure. Any university campus in the country would be thrilled to have a park such as this so close to campus. It has spectacular views of the Chugach Mountains and many recreational amenities. Goose Lake Park is in a low-lying area. UAA should strive to preserve this park and avoid encroaching on it visually or with increasing levels of air, noise, and light pollution. UAA would benefit by thinking of the north end of UAA Drive as a pleasing greenway into campus. If the natural surroundings of Goose Lake Park are degraded, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to reverse the damage. I hope that the UDC returns the garage proposal to UAA to look at a more appropriate location for the parking garage. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Commissioner Sahil. Ma'am? Ma'am?
With the plans that we have in front of us tonight, so you're just suggesting we reject the parking garage completely? Is there any changes that could be made to make the project more acceptable to you?
With the traffic increase on UA Drive, which is often backed up with traffic, making it difficult to turn out of our access to UAA Drive. And with the additional traffic and not knowing the effect of the new sports arena on UAA Drive traffic, I think there's so many unknowns. I think we also don't know what the ultimate effect of the HSIP DOT project will be and how that will affect traffic on UAA Drive. But the two projects, the garage and the HSIP, are going on concurrently. So one's going to be completed and the other one's kind of going on, but you don't know how they're all going to work together. So, I mean, it's a good question. I think there are better locations for the garage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, for the record, my name is Ryan Buchholdt. Do you need me to spell that? It's B-U-C-H-H-O-L-D-T. And I'm a former student body president from last year of UAA and student body leader. I'm also now working for UAA, but it's only been a few weeks, and most of my knowledge on this project is from my time as a student leader. There are two things I want to address just from having come from the world of being a student and dealing with pathways and traffic issues with that. First of all, related to the straightening of Mallard, I actually really enjoy and appreciate the idea of straightening it. As a student of not only KCC back when I was in high school, but also my early years at UAA, I, like many students, pretty much abuse the angle of Mallard now if you need to take that back road into the back end of campus or get to KCC, where you really don't stop and you just sort of hope you get through a gap of traffic. That alone leads to a lot of accidents. So straightening that actually encourages, in my mind, more kind of responsible behavior from drivers as they're trying to make that turn. Related to the pathways around campus and the sidewalks, I had briefly stepped out when the question on sidewalks related to the actual building itself came up, but through the central corridor of campus, both interior and exterior, there's actually a fair number of wide open pathways that students gravitate towards when walking from, say, what used to be the K building, now the PSB, across campus. I don't know many students that actually take along Providence Drive to get places. That sidewalk is pretty hit or miss and pretty narrow. Most people take the wide open corridors through the Cuddy Quad and would cut into that building much better that way. My next major piece on this is the garage itself. And I'll admit, as student body president, when I first heard the location, I was sort of taking a little step back. But as I thought about it more and I talked to more students more about sort of their patterns and behaviors, as well as university officials, that the location of that garage actually better served the internal flow of students as they came to campus. I mean, this would be a good central location, a place that students that normally would drive across campus based on being on east and west ends of classes all day, they could set up base camp in that building and then take the central spine corridor system that's pretty much right in the middle of campus, right there, right where the garage will be, to both ends of campus, and able to actually provide more of a not only community field internally, but less driving of students from, say, the far west lot over to the arts lot or SSB lot on the eastern central side of campus there. So this location, just internally from a student perspective, is actually very good. I can't really pick a better place. I would have put a garage. And yeah, I guess I'd leave it at that.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Sullivan.
Okay, I just want to know what's your perspective when it comes, your student perspective when it comes to the Goose Lake Park.
Well, I'd say there's sort of two aspects from that, because I actually know a fair number of students that try to park at Goose Lake, which then would disrupt that parking there because there's nothing else really in the area. I mean, the nearest parking lot there is in the social sciences building, which I could tell you is almost always full unless campus is closed down for a winter storm. So I think actually putting some better parking in that section of campus would help pull some students away from abusing that parking lot and then walking along a road which, as some of the discussion has been, doesn't really have adequate kind of sidewalks. So I'd actually say the garage could help alleviate that. As for the park itself, I've been to a number of events there, and I really appreciate the park there. I like the fact that if students want to work outside but maybe get away from campus for a little bit, that option's there. I appreciate having parks nearby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could interject something. We've had, the gentleman who just spoke is a UAA employee and a former student, or that's how he identified himself. And I just also want to point out, it seems the first man who got up to speak was also associated with the engineering program. He's also a UAA employee, and they all come under the qualification of the petitioner. So, the petitioner has 10 minutes at to make their case, and that includes everyone associated with the project. So they have 10 minutes, for UAA, the petitioner to make.
I understand.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. Just for the record, we are going to consider that the testimony of the UAA employees was presented in their own behalf, and that's how the chair sees it. And so, with that being said, please state your name.
Hi, my name is Andrew McConnell. I have a question before I get started, too, actually, about the timing. I'm here today as the Vice President of USUA, which is the Union of Students at the University of Alaska Anchorage. I'm representing on their behalf. I don't know if that qualifies me for 5 minutes or 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not an employee of the university as well, but from a student perspective, we're very, very excited about these projects. I personally am a junior at UAA, so I will never get to use these facilities. Hopefully, I really hope, because I hope to be graduated by the time they're built. But we are very excited. Students that are freshmen that are going to use these, as well as folks like myself that it's going to be sort of a legacy project for us, are very energetic about these. There's been, I'd like to start about, concerning the parking garage, there's been a really ongoing support from students for the parking garage. Like I said, I represent all the students at UAA, and as sort of an outreach, the students of the University of Alaska Anchorage system, that includes Mat-Su, Kenai, those associated campuses. So in total, about just a little bit over 20,000 students, but 15,500 at the main campus here in Anchorage. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but it's really interesting. One of the things that most students can agree on is fees. We actually just passed in USUAA a resolution recently to raise the parking fee that students pay on a semester basis from $10 to $13. Getting $3 out of somebody doesn't sound like it would be a big challenge, but when you're a student, that is a huge challenge. And the fact that students are backing parking shows how much of a concern we have for it. A couple points that I'd like to make is that, as far as parking is concerned, a lot of students do drive to campus. I live in Spenard, so it's definitely something that I drive to campus regularly. I promise you all, I've tried to take the bus, and I'd love to make that something on a regular basis, but I live right next to In-N-Out Liquor and such, that nice bus stop there. My bus is not always on time. Getting to class on time in the morning is not even a remote option a lot of the time. But that being said, a lot of students do try to utilize those systems. I'd like to say that Chris Terlides and facilities at UAA have really worked hard with students on this project. There's been a lot of communication with myself. I mean, I literally went into my first meeting about this plan this last year, and there was a big map laid out on the table with UAA, and it showed this is what we want in 10 years, in 15 years, and 20 years. And they sat me down and said, what do you think? And that was the first question I was asked. I said, oh, well, I think it looks like UAA. But we started getting into it and saying, well, where do students walk? Where do they travel? Where would students like to park? What's a good central location? And like Mr. Buckle said, one thing when the parking garage came up, I'm on the record at a Board of Regents meeting as saying this. I said, why is that going there instead of the engineering building? Was my first question, because I was kind of perplexed with that as well as a student. And again, as we started to look at it, its location and sort of that central factor is something that I as a student really value. I currently have 2 classes at UAA on a regular basis during the day. One is at Rasmussen Hall at the west end of campus. The other is at the Conoco Phillips Integrated Science Building at the other. I park at Rasmussen. Sometimes depending on how cold it is, we'll drive to the other side of campus. I mean, that's what creates traffic, and you have a lot of students that are in the same situation as myself. So I just want you to sort of rest easy and know that there has been a lot of student input into this. It's something that, as far as travel across campus and as far as kind of student involvement in the area, it really has had a hard look at it, and we've been working really closely with facilities, and I appreciate the work that's been done with them to bring the project to the students' attention. So, thank you.
Thank you. For the record, will you restate your name and spell it?
Oh, excuse me. My name is Andrew McConnell. My last name is McConnell, and I'm the current vice president of the student body.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Howdy, my name is Austin Gardline, spelled Gardline, and I'm, as you can tell, a UA student. I'm also a UA scholar. So I believe the proposed garage is intended to be erected under a false build it and they will come pretense. In my opinion, a garage is best suited to the role of a centralized parking hub, which there's already such a garage at the Social Sciences building, which is relatively equidistant between both ends of the campus. There are more students, I've observed, who drive to each class and hop from one parking lot to the next. Then there are those who park in one location and walk or use the campus transit. And I feel this makes the proposed garage functionally oversized and redundant. I'm also of the opinion that funds would be better spent improving existing campus transit and encouraging more long-term parking for students and faculty. Purchasing more shuttles that campus transit is timelier and more reliable is one relatively cheap and multifaceted approach to the many problems UA has with campus commutation. I myself park off campus and walk to all my classes because the shuttle is not actually fast enough to connect me between them. They're all back-to-back. More shuttles in this regard would reduce the 15-minute wait to something more manageable, being able to get students who have back-to-back classes like myself to those classes on time. In short, I feel the proposed garage as it stands now is a rushed and very unelegant solution to a long, standing, and complicated problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
My name's Susan Klein. It's spelled Klein. And I was not going to speak tonight, but after listening to some of the testimony, I decided I would. First, I live in the area. I live in College Gate, and I also used to work for UAA, and I also was a student at UAA in the 90s. And my perspective on parking, as someone who walked from class to class, was that most students didn't do that. And so I'm speaking mostly about the parking garage. I support having adding on to the engineering building. I had classes in the old engineering building in the 90s, and even then it needed refurbishing. So I support that, but I am pretty upset about the process of how this all came about, and that's my main concern, is the process. When I've heard presentations and asked questions, I asked specifically, understand that the municipality requires a certain number of spots per size of the building. And that is why this building is being built the size it is. It's replacing a certain number of current parking spots, and then it's adding some because of the size of the building, is my understanding. Meanwhile, there are areas on campus that are underutilized in terms of parking, and my suggestion is to reduce the size of the parking garage because we still have some spots out there that are not currently being used. So that would be my suggestion, is maybe take one layer off of the parking garage so that it would be smaller, and use those other spots, and encourage people to use the shuttle or increase the size of the frequency of the shuttle. Because right now, it would be hard with every 15 minutes to, if you have 15 minutes between classes, it sometimes is hard to get to classes. with the current shuttle system, and so I would encourage that be increased. So the other thing I have to say is that until I was in one of the meetings about this project, I did not know that UAA was undergoing a master plan review. And I go to a lot of community council meetings. I used to be the president of our community council, so I'm on all the lists. I get lists for just about every single meeting that there is. And I had no knowledge of this. Meanwhile, APU came to us about their master plan and talked to us about that. Now, we may disagree with what they want to do, but I would like it if they would come to us and present. We don't have to agree. It's their property. But it would be really, I think the process is what is screwed up. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Is there any further public testimony? Yeah. Is there any further public testimony? Does anyone else wish to speak to the case? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give the petitioner 3 minutes to sum up. And
Mr. Chairman, can we take a break?
Yeah.
Before we have the commissioner come up, or the petitioner come up and have their rebuttal?
Let's do that.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. All right, we are back live. The meeting is back to order. The petitioner has 3 minutes. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Gary Katsion, spelled K-A-T-S-I-O-N. We prepared the traffic impact analysis that was required by the municipality for the building and for the parking garage. There's questions brought up tonight about why we put the garage where it is. Prior to the traffic impact analysis, we put together a site selection. We looked at 10 different sites. What it really came down to was that if you put a garage on an existing parking lot, you had to then increase the size of the garage even more because of those spaces. We were required to put 260 spaces for the new garage, or for the new building, plus any other parking we displaced. So that was a major consideration of putting it in any of the other locations that currently had parking on it. The existing location was really picked for a couple reasons. One, it's centrally located. It would pull traffic off of UAA Drive as soon as possible because a good portion of the traffic that comes to the university comes that way. We also looked at the improvements that the state and the city were making. Our projects complemented that as well. So in looking at all of the pieces all put together, this was the logical place to put it. Mallard Drive was one other, or Mallard Lane was another consideration. That's a public roadway that's currently on UAA property. And so that had to be moved. That was a given as part of this project as well. Yeah, the congestion on UAA, I mean, we've been back and forth. We've been working with the city on this since May in terms of what was going to be the best solution in that. And us putting that additional extension of UAA Drive down to Mallard was going to alleviate quite a bit of that congestion, and then coupled that with not allowing any left turns out of Mallard going to the north. That's going to minimize our impacts to the UAA congestion issues.
Hi, I'm John Fonts. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction at the university.
Can you spell your last name, please?
F-A-U-N-C-E.
Thank you.
I'd like to address some of the architectural questions that came up. I'm a civil engineer, so rectilinear is good, but We went through quite a bit of effort with our Board of Regents on the appearance of the buildings. We, as any state agency, are held to be good custodians of the taxpayers' dollars, and our guidelines are along the lines of constructing buildings that meet the architectural features of other buildings on campus. So we went to quite a bit of effort to make the buildings, the main building, similar in appearance to the building across the street from it, the parking garage. You know, it is a parking garage, and it's hard to make a parking garage look like anything but a parking garage. We put the metal paneling in. It's the same thing that's reflected in the existing building and in the new building. We made the concrete, pressed concrete, to look like paneling so that it fits in with other buildings on campus. And this is really our guidelines. Our regents are quite insistent. We had to go back to them 4 or 5 times to get approval on where we are today. So it's not something we just come in with.
Thank you.
If I may, just clarify that we were pretty surprised with the building comments and that we would be amenable to adding a condition of approval where we work with the planning department on the building articulation questions.
Thank you. Are there any final questions? I have a couple questions for your traffic people. Do you know the traffic volume on UAA peak and what's your peak volume of traffic on UAA Drive?
The
cars per day. Well, cars per day and then peak per hour. I assume 5 to 6 is probably your peak, and what is that peak, and then how many cars per day are you looking at? Do you know?
I don't know them off the top of my head. We've got our reports with us.
Because that's, I mean, have you ever seriously considered just closing UAA Drive from Alumni and leave it open to emergency vehicles only? So basically the only thing from Alumni Drive to Providence, the only thing it could go through is an ambulance either way, particularly one way, for obvious reasons, but just basically make the connection, and that way you destine this parking garage. Everybody, if you want to go, you're going to park you will get everybody parking in that garage, or they're going to go east or west across campus. But if you stop, because I've been to UAA, I understand that nobody uses that crosswalk. It's an ornament. Everybody walks across that. They ride their bikes, they skate. I've seen someone actually get hit in that intersection before, and because they ride the bikes across that intersection. But if you close it to emergency only vehicles and make it a pedestrian crossing, you basically right between right where the crossing is, right here. This is basically you end traffic on UAA Drive right here at Alumni. Has that ever been a thought?
UAA Drive is the only public street in this whole area that serves the UMed district, and there's no way that the city would allow that street to be closed to partial. I mean, that's not our call. That's the university's. The one thing that came up in our discussion with this was, would it have been easier to put access directly into the parking garage from UAA? And that was basically an absolute no from the municipality. We're following the municipality's guidelines in how we're accessing this, what improvements we're making, with how it stands today. Because you have to have access into Providence, you have to have access into the university, and UAA is the only way you can get there from the north.
Okay.
And so, as far as what we're doing here, I think the improvements we're making, Mallard Lane is being moved 300 feet to the north, which increases the distance between Mallard and Alumni Drive right now, where there's a lot of problems because they're just too closely spaced together. We're moving it 300 feet, almost a full city block to the north. And so that'll help traffic flow between Alumni and Mallard. The other thing to recognize is that between Northern Lights Boulevard and Mallard, the new Mallard is still 1,100 feet. That's almost 3 city blocks. And so what the improvements that we're making, along with the improvements that the state is making, is going to make that traffic flow much better, because the people that are coming from the east turning left onto UAA Drive, wanting to continue on to Providence, they're going to have their own lane to go all the way straight through. They're not going to have to be weaving back and forth. The people that are coming from the east going to the parking garage will have their own left turn lane, basically. And when we brought the idea of extending the state's improvement all the way to Mallard to the city, they thought it was a great idea. The state did as well, because what that is forcing the cars to do is actually balance the double left turn lanes traffic, where right now, if everybody was wanting to go straight on through, they would just, everybody would be in that left turn, the inside left turn lane. With now taking some of that traffic and put it into the garage, you start filling up that outside lane, so it's a much better balance. And so there's not going to be a lot of weaving, as was alluded to earlier. You're not going to see weaving between, because the cars are going to be in their place, really, because these people are using the garage on a regular basis. They're not coming, it's not just a one-time shop.
Thank you. One other question. Do we have this slide in our packet?
I don't know.
So it came in tonight's handout.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, I had some additional questions. I'm sorry if I wasn't quick enough.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Saho.
Thank you. I guess my questions are for Ms. Hickok. Back to your recommended changes to the conditions of approval. I guess I'm having a hard time seeing that building a sidewalk along UAA Drive is a bad thing. Collector roads generally have sidewalks on both sides. You know, they're busy streets. We want to encourage people to stay on their side of the street. You're going to build a sidewalk along Mallard, and then there's going to be this gap from Mallard, you know, down to the parking garage. So I'm having a hard time seeing that we should accept your recommended change and not just go with staff.
And the reason why we're requesting that change is this project, the parking structure, is not encouraging pedestrian traffic to the north. We have no pedestrian access to our parking structure from the north. It's all concentrated, funneled from the south. So for the need of this specific project, it's not needed. But we do see the need in general for the global scale of the UMED plan, UMED area, where it would be needed. However, even at that point, there's nothing to the north to access on the west side of UAA Drive. We're more than amenable to be working with the municipality and UAA to obtain some sort of future funding for sidewalk pedestrian improvements in this UMED area. But as far as putting that cost onto this specific project, it seems when we're already doing a lot of off-site improvements, it seems a little far overreaching. And so that is why we're requesting that we resolve it with the municipal engineer. We're not taking it off completely, but leaving it open for more discussion with him on if we can make some sort of other arrangement as far as maybe we can somehow go for additional funding in a future date.
Okay. And then my next question is condition number 15. Eliminating the walkway over to Providence Drive. And one of the reasons you talked about eliminating that walkway is because there was an elevation issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at your grading plan on sheet C105, and if you look at the southeast corner of the parking lot, and then the elevation, if you went straight south to Providence Drive, that area is flat, that they're basically the same elevation. I could understand the curvilinear alignment that Ms. Genke proposed maybe is problematic, but if you just made a straight connection to UAA, it looks like the grades would allow it.
Right here.
Right, yeah, well, before we came, Paul Doherty again with Livingston Sloan. Before we came this evening, I went and met with our civil engineer and looked at the finished floor elevation of the new building, and then began looking at the contour lines as we go up. And at that point where you come across the west end of the building going south, what he's saying is that that contour is 8 feet above the finished floor line. So there's 8 feet of rise, and then it drops down several more feet to the sidewalk.
So there'd be a significant cut or maybe some requirement for stairs to make that type of connection. And I think as Chair Dinwiddie had mentioned, there is that sidewalk connection further to the west that would serve a very similar purpose.
My reading of that is the southeast corner of the parking lot is elevation 149, and the elevation of the street directly south of the southeast corner is 149.
The finished floor elevation is 143.
I'm looking at a sidewalk connection from Providence Drive to the parking lot.
Just to the parking lot?
Just to the parking lot.
Into a parking stall?
Right. Well, just to you could build a sidewalk along the parking lot and it would be at grade, right?
We could cut a sidewalk through there, sure. We're still going to have to dig it out, but we can do that.
We would have to have some fill, an excavation cut to make that work.
Yeah.
Is that a retaining wall then along that edge of the parking lot? This looks like a curb line to me.
No, the building's actually set down in the grade at that point, and the civil engineer has raised the grade up around that corner to force the water to the east, to force drainage to the east around there. We can accept a condition to work with staff to figure out how to get a sidewalk through there.
So just to clarify, Commissioner Sawhill, it would just be a walkway to the parking lot, not from the parking lot all the way to the front door. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's the way I saw it, too.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tiber.
Yeah, from the public testimony, there was a sentiment from the community council and some of the residents that they weren't included at all in the planning process, and basically that a completed plan was sprung on them. Can you speak a little bit to your process there and what efforts you made to engage the stakeholders?
Sure. As UAA mentioned, they are in the process of updating their master plan. They have met with, I want to say, 4 community councils several months ago, and we're on our second round again at UACC just this last week, discussing the project. We also met several times with the immediate neighbors, the Von Wickmans and the Wilkins, specifically, and as Mr. Stang had mentioned, we had met with him again on Friday. So there has been some public outreach at the community council level, I believe 2 at UACC specifically, before we came to you tonight.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that question, was that shared with the community council? The site
figure,
selection?
that was in this is the PowerPoint from that presentation, yes.
Are there any further questions? I think we're done.
Okay.
Now we will close the public hearing. Well, what is the the will of the commission right now. I mean, I'll step out on a limb and I guess Commissioner Sawhill has made a motion to approve. I will second that motion. Oh, Commissioner Sawhill, will you speak to your motion? And then I will talk about it.
Mr. Chairman, in case 2013-011, I move for approval of the final site plan and final landscape review of the University of Alaska School of Engineering and Industrial Building Phase 1 and the parking structure, subject to staff conditions, which start on page 15 and go through to 16 and 17. And it would be staff's conditions 1 through 4 as stated. Condition number 5, modified to read, resolve the need to obtain watershed or WMS watercourse mapping summary before May 31st, 2013, and the start of site development, basically as amended as recommended by the applicant. Condition number 6, as described by staff. Condition number 7, amended as recommended by the applicant to say, apply for an improvement to public places agreement with project management and engineering, for the realignment of Mallard Lane prior to receiving a footing and foundation permit for the parking structure. Number 8 would be amended to read as recommended by the applicant, resolve the need to provide a sidewalk for the parking structure along UAA Drive from the existing sidewalk to the adjacent engineering building to the intersection with the realigned Mallard Lane, with the municipal engineer to comply with the policies of Anchorage 2020 Comprehensive Plan, the Anchorage Pedestrian Plan, and the UMed Master Plan, and Title 21 of the Municipal Code. Condition number 9, would be amended to read as recommended by the applicant. During construction activities for the parking structure, provide a barrier or other solution to protect existing vegetation to remain. Staff conditions 10 through 14. 15 I'm struggling with. I'm going to leave 15 as suggested by staff, and 16 and 17.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Sorry. I would like to add a condition.
We need a second.
Point of order, I need a second on the motion, and then you can do an amendment after that.
I can't. We need a second in the motion to approve. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. There's a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Now, Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I would like to do an amendment to the conditions for condition number 18. And that's the additional change in treatments at the south facade of the parking garage. No, the facade facing UA Drive.
Is there another, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on Commissioner Sullivan's amendment to add condition 18. Is there any opposition?
Mr. Chairman, I seconded it just to get it on the floor, and I guess could you restate your condition? I'm having a hard time understanding a little bit what you're trying to do.
I understand that the main building, it's long, but it has some intention of change on bay windows and fenestrations. I am a little more concerned about the parking garage facing UA Drive. It's very close to the road, so I would like to ask for additional change in treatments, maybe at least a third of the building.
So you would like to make it a condition to change the treatment
Yes.
of the parking garage?
Would it be clear to say the architectural treatment?
Yes, maybe changing, you guys have a different treatment in the south side. It changes from the corners to something else and then to the towers. So maybe playing a little more with the facade that it's located towards UA Drive.
And I guess following that up, is that something you intend them to bring back to us for our review? Or is that something that would be resolved with staff? How do you see that playing out?
That should be resolved with staff.
And one of the suggestions I was going to, in a friendly amendment way, that might tag onto yours is, I would suggest that the UAA Drive side should go with larger trees, 5-foot spruce trees and 2-inch caliper birch. I think with the proposition of the amenities you're speaking to, putting in pretty good sized trees right off the bat might break that up quite a bit. I would suggest that you put 10 to 12 foot spruce trees in and 3 to 4 inch caliper deciduous trees, if that could be added to your amendment in a friendly way.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that would be a different, an additional condition of approval and should be separate.
Okay.
Since
number 19.
At this point, I'd like to go ahead and speak to the amendment, and I'm a little concerned about the amendment, and it's a little vague, and I'm worried it doesn't provide clear direction, and I will not be supporting the amendment.
Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to find out your amendment?
Let me try. At the start of, you comment that the facades were a little too long and boring. I am just trying to, it's a parking garage. Parking garages are a little overwhelming always, and it's very close to the UAA Drive. So I'm just suggesting that they will make some changes in the facade treatment, not changing the materials, not changing I know that for parking garages it's not easy to change depth. So just trying to change, maybe with screen or with a different treatment, at least a third of the building, maybe in the middle, just to have some changes.
Commissioner Sawhill.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Sullivan, I guess my concerns with the current amendment is, I guess maybe architects talk to each other better and they understand, but it's not clear to me what the direction to them is what it should do. And if we were going to have them modify that elevation, I would support the motion if it came back to the board as a consent agenda item to bring back revised elevations of the garage and a non-public hearing consent agenda item. And we can take a look at it, make a reasonable judgment as to whether they've addressed our concerns, and then approve it that way. But as a resolve with staff, I'm not comfortable with that. So if we want to amend it to amend the amendment, should I take a shot at it? We're ready for an amendment, a motion to amend? If I can get a second. And I guess, Madam Secretary, could you read back the motion as it currently stands? Do we have even a chance of doing that?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Sawhill, I've been scribbling here. Maybe I can present it and then the commission can toy with it. Provide architectural treatment to the facade of the parking structure facing UAA Drive for at least 1/3 of the length of the facade, and then your whatever you want, bring it back for on the consent agenda, what have you.
Okay, and I guess my motion would be to take that condition as stated with the addition of the revised elevations will be provided to the Urban Design Commission as a consent agenda item. And by their nature, consent agenda items are not a public hearing. And is there any problem with rushing those consent agenda items onto our agenda?
They could be, no, there's no problem at all putting it on the consent agenda.
Okay, there's no time delay for the applicant?
No, none at all.
Great, thank you.
So that's very acceptable to the viewers.
Okay, so is there any, we're going to vote on this amendment, the amended amendment. Is there any opposition to that amendment? Hearing none, that amendment passes. Now I'd like to make another amendment to the first.
Well, I think we need to vote on the amendment we have in front of us first.
Oh, I thought we just did. Okay. We're going to vote on the amendment as modified, Commissioner Sullivan's original amendment. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, that amendment passes. So I would kindly suggest that someone make a motion to what I spoke to for condition number 19 regarding the size of the trees. All evergreens for the garage plan be 12 foot and all deciduous trees be 3.5, 4-inch caliber. And the reason why is it'll give instant screening. It'll break up the facade. It's a more instant solution to the concrete castle we're building here. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Would you like to speak to your amendment?
No, I just think it's great to plant taller trees and break that facade a little more. I support your motion.
Well, I need you to say exactly what I said.
The motion.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm new here. So,
Pass her a note.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a shot at, or help take a shot at this. You're looking for the green spruce that are on the east side of the parking garage?
I'm going to make it even one simpler. Every green spruce on sheet L100 for the garage to be 12 foot, and all deciduous trees on sheet L100 to be 3.5 or 4-inch caliper. That makes it much more simple. There's not that many trees on the north or south side that makes a difference. Just the whole plan has to be bigger.
I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with 12 feet. That seems very large to me. I think we should maybe enhance the trees on that side, but I'm concerned about specifying something that's not maybe readily available. So I'm getting lost, Mr. Chairman. Because right now the specification is 5 to 6 feet tall.
Right.
And no caliper specification, is that correct?
Well, there's two different types of trees. You have a green spruce tree, and a 12-foot spruce tree is pretty common. It's a large tree, but it's what a big residential tree would. And all the other trees, instead of 2-inch caliper, there's two types. There's paper birch and common or Swedish aspen. Those trees would be 3.5 inch instead of 2-inch.
Okay.
And, just for the trees on the other side, for the health science trees were about 3. The other building that just got UA did last year, they are 3.5 inch, 4-inch trees. This is more common. And 12-foot trees, I don't think 12-foot trees are, I'd live with 10-foot trees, but it's an instant. 5-foot trees are teeny. They're the cheapest evergreen spruce trees you can put in that have any size height. So, it's the size of this.
3.5 inch and 10 inch would meet what you're saying.
Okay.
Unless you request Peter to speak, you can't speak.
I understand he can't speak, but I appreciate it anyway. If I could take a shot at the motion, Mr. Chairman, I'd move to add condition number 19. I move to add a condition number 19 to change the height of the evergreen trees along UAA Drive to 10-foot height, and the paper birch along UAA Drive to 3-inch caliper. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Tiber seconded it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can speak to that, I do believe that with the proximity of the parking garage to the street, that it would benefit from some enhanced landscaping in that location. I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sahil. Is there any opposition to the amendment? Hearing none, that amendment passes. All right, now we're back to our original motion. Are there any other amendments or no other amendments? Mr. Sahil, would you like to speak to your original motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would. I intend to support my motion. I did have and continue to have some concerns with the projects that are before us. As a civil engineer, I am very supportive of the new engineering building. I think this is a great thing. I love UAA grads, and I hope you keep them coming. We love hiring them. I would concur with staff's analysis of the standards for site plan review and standards for landscape plan have been met. I do find that the standards in the UMed plan have also been met. I still am a little concerned about the long building for the engineering building along UAA Drive, and wish that those elevations were a little better. But I think we can go with what we have. Would have liked to have seen the parking garage set back a little bit more from UAA Drive, but they have constraints on the other side that affect the site design and site layout. So I think the compromise they have is probably the best we can do from a site planning perspective. So I appreciate their efforts in trying to cite that, but and again, I wish it could be a little better, but I think they've done the best they can. I would hope that when they resolve the sidewalk with the municipality that they build one, but I'll leave that to you to work the details out with them. And again, I believe it meets the goals of the comprehensive plan, the standards of the UMed district, and I will be supporting my motion.
Ms. Sullivan, would you like to speak to your second? Is there any discussion? I actually am also going to support the motion, but one of the things that as this commission, particularly public infrastructure projects come before us in public hearings, we've probably only had one other in both terms of my one other that's had the same kind of public testimony that we heard tonight, and that project was, I think, lacked the same kind of forethought with the community councils. I would say that we are probably disappointed at your community planning with the neighborhood. It's not usual to have that much public testimony from the surrounding neighbors against a project, and feel that they weren't involved, particularly at UAA and Providence, UMed. I mean, usually it's positive. That being said, I like the project. I think it's in line with everything else that's been built at UMed, and I will support the project. Is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Sharon, do you have anything?
Yes. We have a new, I think some of you know Jocelyn Young. She is the curator for the 1% for Art projects.
Yes.
And she retired, I think, back in December, and she has a new replacement. And I think she wants to come out and do a talk for you all some evening when we've got a short agenda, and she'll wait and speak to the commission after a while. I think all of you are pretty new. I think you haven't seen the slideshow, or even aware of the 1% for Art project. All public facilities have to have a 1% of the budget goes into creating public art, and that public art can either be in the building or outside the building or some combination. And so she has a slideshow and a presentation that she'll want to bring and show to the commissioners at some point. And the commissioners have been participating on these committees for public art. There are a number of projects that have come before the UDC that get to a certain point and they are deliberating about which artists that they're going to go with. And so she is requesting volunteers from the UDC, whoever wants to sit and be involved in the 1% for Art for these various projects. There have been some fire stations that you guys have seen recently. There are some other projects.
Hold on one second. I have to state the appeals process one more time for the record. Just for the record, any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the UDC Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission's final decision. Thank you. Sorry, Sharon.
No, it's okay. So, yes, typically one of the commissioners is one of the members that sits on this board that decides what public art is going to go into that facility. Say if it's a school project, maybe the school principal sits on it, and one or two of the teachers, plus the architect for the project sits on the board, and maybe somebody from the community is on this board, and then we have somebody from the UDC that's also on the board. So what they do is they send an RFP out to all the artists saying, we have this school or we have this fire station, and please, if you're interested, this is the budget we have, and if you're interested in submitting an art piece for it, let us know. So all those people come in with their qualifications. I've done these other art projects, and yes, I'd like to be part of it. And so then they whittle those down of the number of people that they're going to consider, and then they decide who they're going to allow to participate, which artist. And then all those artists that have been chosen, submit their art piece of what they want to do, and then the committee decides which of those art pieces from those artists that they're going to have, this is the one we're going to do for the school or the fire station or whatever it may be. So I sat on it once myself just to familiarize myself with the process, but it is a lot of fun. It doesn't take much time at all. You meet maybe 3 times over a period of 2 years. And it's really a great opportunity to look at art and what these artists do. And because at one of the meetings, you're just looking at the body of work that this particular artist has done in other similar situations. And just even deciding if the type of art they do is kind of what you guys want to see or what that committee wants to see done. So anyway, she's looking for anyone who's interested in being on some of these art committees for a particular project. Monica? Okay. I'm not sure how many other projects there are, but Monica's interested. Would you want to sit on more than one? You could. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. It's really, I like it. I liked it. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm interested.
Okay. Yes, you do.
Just a reminder that next month is elections for chair and vice chair, March. So keep that in mind.
Jeff is free.
Mr. Pratt.
Yeah. We got Steve warmed up in the bullpen.
Yeah. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, we do have, looks like another UDC commissioner coming on board. He's an architect, Jerry Winchester. He hasn't been approved by the assembly yet, but the mayor has recommended him.
Good. Help.
Maybe we're not getting kicked off after all. All right. Anyone have anything else?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn? Anyone? We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Tiber, second by Ms. Commissioner Emerton. We are adjourned. I'm pretty sure.